Hey beautiful humans, I'm RidersDX, and today what we're gonna do is something a little bit different, but something that I think is gonna be really fun, but also could get me into a lot of hot water. So that's always a good idea for a video topic, you know, something that can literally get my skin boiling. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna go do all the console games that Spongebob has appeared in and rank them all on a tier list. We've got 5 really epic tiers over here. At the very bottom belongs in the trash because these are all licensed games, and as you all know, there's a bunch of licensed games that do belong in the trash. We also got E minors, so games that aren't that great, but I wouldn't say they're completely unlistenable. At least E minor is technically a legit musical key, so we gotta give it a couple flowers. Now we have photosynthesis, and poor tier maker can't actually fit that in one line. Photosynthesis is something that we accept, you know, we're glad that it's a part of the natural ecosystem, but we're not going crazy about it. Then we got more handsome than handsome Squidward, which is a pretty significant feat. These are pretty good games, especially since they're, you know, quite attractive. And then we've got Robot Pirate Island Conqueror, so this is reserved for the best of the best games, and so you have to try really hard to get within that status. I haven't played all these games that in-depthly, so I'll try my best to you know, remember what I did with some of these games, but I have at least touched, I think, all of them. So let's go ahead and just get into this list. Alright, so first up is Nicktoons Racing. I've only played like maybe 15 minutes of this game. Like, it honestly did not leave a huge impression on me. It's got a decent roster of characters, and the gameplay isn't that bad, but it's also nothing really that crazy, especially when you had games like Mario Kart and Crash Team Racing coming out around the same time. It really didn't make much of a dent to me, so I'm gonna go ahead and put him in E minor. Not off to a great start so far. And now we got the first ever like SpongeBob console game, solo SpongeBob console game, Super Sponge. Yeah, I'm sorry. As soon as I played that game, I was like, this is definitely not the game for me. Platforming was frustrating. 2D sprite art in a PlayStation game is just a terrible, terrible thing to do. I'm sorry. It was a flop. It was a complete flop. Okay, next up we got Revenge of the Flying Dutchman. So I actually recently revisited this game for an upcoming project that I will talk about a little bit more in the future. But Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, I used to actually really like this game a lot as a kid. It was one of the only SpongeBob platformers I had access to besides Battle for Bikini Bottom, and so I was totally sold on it. But when I revisited it recently, I did not like it very much at all. You know, there's just a lot about this game that has not aged well, and so I don't know. I'm torn between photosynthesis and E minor because it's really not like a terrible game, but it's definitely not a game that I ever want to go back to. I'll give it photosynthesis. I still have a little bit of nostalgia for that game, so I can't really bring myself to put it in like anything lower than that at this point, but I definitely did not enjoy that much on my recent playthrough. Nickelodeon Party Blast. This is the easiest thing ever. Belongs in the trash. One of the worst examples of a party game I've ever seen. It honestly was such a chore to play through. I don't know how I ever got through the experience of playing that game, even if it was just for like a half hour. Like, I don't even remember what it was that was so bad. I just remember the mini games like being so either unfun or just unresponsive in terms of controls. It just was a complete hot mess. I don't ever want to revisit that ever again. Now we've got the goat of all goats over here. So we have this game that you may or may not have heard of. It's called Battle for Bikini Bottom. Yeah, this is such a tough choice. Clearly, no, it's not a tough choice. Robot Pirate Island Conqueror, honestly. SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom not only set the standard for SpongeBob games going forward, but also set the standard for licensed games in general. It is such an iconic game. It's made history as a SpongeBob game, but also as a video game in general, especially with the speedrun community that evolved as a result of this game. And honestly, like, what is there to say about Battle for Bikini Bottom at this point? It is honestly just such a god tier game. So, Robot Pirate Island Conqueror it is. Alright, Nicktoons Movin'. This is a bit of a weird game to me because I feel like the game was definitely held back by the technology at the time. Nicktoons Movin' was definitely a decent idea for a game. I mean, we love Nickelodeon and we love party games with Nickelodeon characters. Like, come on, let's be honest. It's an appealing idea, and you know, they definitely had some good mini games on here that really took advantage of the properties. The problem was that the iToy just wasn't the most responsive thing in the world, and it just didn't really lend itself to be a really fun game as a result. E minor or photosynthesis for me for this one. I think it's gonna edge onto I'll give it photosynthesis. It's not a terrible game, and I definitely think it had a little bit of charm, so I did enjoy my time of it a little bit, but definitely not something I'll really return to. Okay, The SpongeBob SquarePants movie game. This game, I don't know if it's a Robot Pirate Island Conqueror anymore. I think in the past I definitely would have said that. It basically took the gameplay of Battle for Bikini Bottom and just made another game with it. So it's a very solid game, you know, just because of that. The gameplay is just as good as it is in Battle for Bikini Bottom. It's definitely a little more challenging, like they definitely upped the ante with it. But at the same time, the game also incorporates a lot of bullshit. Like, I'm really not a fan of the driving levels. They're not terrible per se, but the fact that you're forced to do so many of them because of all those extra missions, that's a game design flaw in a lot of games around this time that I absolutely despise. You know, it's basically padding the game out, trying to make it longer by making you do the same things over and over again. Not a really great game design in my opinion. And so I think because of that, I do love this game, but I'm gonna put it in more handsome than handsome Squidward. It's a really good game. It definitely takes a lot of quality to get into that tier, but I can't put it on the same level as Battle for Bikini Bottom. It's just not at that level. SpongeBob Lights Camera Pants. Now, I go hard for this game. This is one of my favorite party games of all time. Some people can argue that it does have its faults. I mean, the story campaign, which is basically the main way of playing this game, takes a little bit too long and it's not really the best party game to kind of jump in and out of. But the minigames themselves are so much fun. I love all the different minigames. I love all the worlds that they brought in. I love how it incorporates so many different characters. And I think the fact that you can kind of create your own movie, playing through the storyline and kind of just like crafting it to be the way that you want it, is a really unique attribute to this game that I don't think any other party game has really done. As much as it has some of its faults, I love this game so much, I'm gonna put in Robot Island Conqueror. Like, it's such a great party game. I know some of the mini games take a little bit too long, but I just played this recently with some of my friends online and we had a blast playing it. It was so much fun. And so I don't think this game has really aged at all. I think it's a great party game and definitely an underrated classic in the SpongeBob video game library. Nicktoons Unite. God, this is painful, honestly. Nicktoons Unite for me was a game I loved as a kid, but the main reason I loved it so much was because it was a game that I could play with my brother and we just had fun like playing as our favorite Nicktoons characters and just going through these levels. But every time I revisit this game now, it is such a chore to play through. You know, the levels drag on, the characters move really slow, the attacks aren't really that creative, and it really is just a mediocre beat 'em up at the end of the day. Do I let nostalgia take over me and put it in photosynthesis, or should I say it as it is and call it E minor? It definitely doesn't belong in the trash. It's a pretty decent game overall, but I put in photosynthesis. It's not a terrible game. Creature from the Krusty Krab. So this is a game that is definitely a bit of a cult classic in the SpongeBob video game community. There's a lot of people that go hard for this game. I like aspects of it. So this is my issue with Creature from the Krusty Krab. I like parts of it, but there's parts I dislike of it as well. And I also think that everything that the game does drags on for a little bit too long, aside from some of the final levels. It takes a lot of different gameplay styles, but it somehow manages to make them all overstay their welcome. That level that takes place inside that giant worm, I should have loved that because it was all platforming. It should have been all just as fun as it was in Battle for Bikini Bottom, the movie game. But the way that Blitz games like screwed the formula a little bit and also like made the level design so much more boring compared to those games, I'm not a big fan of this game, honestly. I do like the idea of it, but I think there's a certain game that comes a little bit later after this that did it way better. So I'm gonna put in photosynthesis. It's not a terrible game, and I definitely like aspects of it, and I appreciate the creativity, but gameplay wise, it's just not a fun game. Okay, we got Battle for Volcano Island, and I actually didn't play this game as a kid. I played it recently for a video that I did like not too long ago, and I actually enjoyed this game, you know? I'm kind of sad I didn't get to experience this as a kid because Battle for Volcano Island is actually a pretty decent game. It's not gonna break any barriers in terms of like, wow, this is some of the best co-op beat 'em up gameplay I've ever seen, but it did everything that Nicktoons Unite did and just made it better. You know, the attacks were more interesting, the characters moved faster, the levels didn't drag on as long, it had a more interesting setup compared to Nicktoons Unite. The only thing that I kind of wish this game did was actually take us to different worlds of the characters. I feel like if we had this gameplay design with Nicktoons Unite's setup, I feel like we would have had the perfect Nickelodeon crossover game. But it's still a pretty good game, so I'm gonna go ahead and put it in more handsome than handsome Squidward. It's a pretty good game. On the other hand though, Attack of the Toy Bots. I did not like this game at all. It does feel very similar to Battle for Volcano Island. I definitely think they built it off of the same engine, but the level design in this game drove me crazy. It almost made me feel like I was playing a Crash Bandicoot game at some points. You know, the way that the characters would die so easily because of certain like level design things that they did in the game. It was just, it was just I don't enjoy this game that much at all. It's honestly like such a disappointment because it really definitely seemed like it upped the production value compared to the previous 2 games. So I definitely think they got a bigger budget and were trying to go for more like interesting things, but I just didn't enjoy it that much. I definitely think I need to revisit it one day because maybe I just was a little bit frustrated playing it the first time around because I wasn't used to the game, but I don't know, I dread going back to it. It's not a game I really want to go back to. I'll put it an E- because it's not an outright terrible game, but it definitely is not a great game in my opinion. Alright, we got Atlantis Square Panis, and so this is kind of a nothing game. That's what I like to call it. It's like a nothing burger. So Atlantis Square Panis, it's a game that just consists of like different mini games that you go through in a storyline, and they're all single player mini games. So you ever heard of a single player party game before? Because that's basically what this game is. It does take you through the Atlantis Square Panis like storyline, which in of itself is not a really great storyline. So the game already has a lot of things going against it, but it's also just kind of like meh. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not like absolutely amazing either. It's just sort of like a mediocre, okay collection of different minigames starring SpongeBob and his friends. And some of the minigames get repeated a little bit too much. Like I really didn't like the button sequence ones. If you're going to do like button sequence things, at least give us like something interesting to see on the screen, not just like the characters walking in the barren wasteland as apparently Atlantis. So I will put it in I don't hate the game, but I think I'm going to put it in E minor. Underpants Slam, and so this is a game that pretty much everyone forgets about. It was an Xbox Live Arcade exclusive game, and it's basically a really simple like 2D platformer where your goal is to collect as much underwear as you can. So it's kind of a weird concept. I don't remember what the storyline reason was for it specifically. In terms of the game itself, I remember playing it and I actually didn't hate it. It was a decent experience. It just, well, it's an Xbox Live Arcade game. I mean, that's not really an excuse per se, but it definitely shows that the game did not get as much of a budget or as much thought put into it as it could have. It also reused assets from Atlantis Square Panis basically. So it's not really like a noteworthy game, but it is better than Atlantis Square Panis. I do think it's a more consistent experience just because it's so short. So, you know, not a terrible game. If you see it and you want to try it out, then I definitely encourage you to. Okay, Globs of Doom. So this game didn't frustrate me as much as Attack of the Toy Bots did. I think the level design was definitely more fair, but at the same time, the level design was a little bit more boring as well. So I remember playing through this game and it kind of just felt like Nicktoons United over again. I mean, it played fine, but it wasn't anything really that special, and I think the glob, gooey aesthetic that all the levels had was a little bit too much for me. I do like a lot of cutscenes in this game. I think the cutscenes were kind of fun, and seeing heroes pair up with villains this time compared to the other games, it was definitely an interesting twist I appreciated. But in terms of gameplay, the game was just a bit of another nothing experience for me. So into E minor it goes. Okay, SpongeBob Truth or Square. This is a game I feel like gets way too much hate, honestly. Truth or Square is definitely not an amazing game. It's definitely not something that is going to blow the house down. It basically is like a more slimmed down version of Battle for Bikini Bottom in the movie games. But a more slimmed down version of those games is still a pretty good game. And I also love the graphical style of this game. There's so much more anime in these cutscenes compared to previous SpongeBob games that came right before it. Heavy Iron Studios might have not had like the time or the resources to really make this game like the epic adventure it could have been, but it's still a pretty fun game and I still enjoy myself playing it. I definitely put it on the same level as Battle for Volcano Island. I don't think it's as good as the movie game, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the same tier anyway because I do think that this is a fun game, and at the end of the day, it's not going to blow your socks off or anything like that, but it's still a decent platformer, and if you're a SpongeBob fan, I think you'll find a lot of things to like about it. So yeah, I like Trophy Square. Boating Bash. Wow, we got another banger over here. Boating Bash is such a weird game that really shouldn't work, but does. It's basically a bumper cars kind of game. You play as SpongeBob and his friends, and your goal is to wreck the other cars in the arena as much as you can. Rack up those points. It's basically like SpongeBob GTA if it was limited to like a short course instead of an open world game, which makes me think it'd be so cool if we got like a SpongeBob open world like game where you can drive cars and boats and, you know, just crash into people and just cause so much mayhem. I really think a Simpsons hit and run like game with SpongeBob characters would be a really great idea. And that Simpsons hit and run mod with SpongeBob characters that Nightbane makes is a great example of how amazing that concept is. But getting back to Boating Bash, this is actually like a dark horse. It's like a really good experience, and I definitely encourage you to check it out. It's just so much nonsensical fun, and the cutscenes are super awkward because they use a mix of models from both Truth or Square and like Creature from the Krusty Krab, and so the characters clash so much and they have the most awkward like movements ever. Like it's so bad that's like good. That's the kind of vibe I get from it, so it's kind of like a fun experience. Okay, SpongeBob SquarePants. I'll be honest, like these kind of games don't really appeal that much to me. Like I really do like the WarioWare games, but it's not games I play every single day. That being said though, in terms of like a quick rapid succession minigame experience, SpongeBob SquarePants does a great job at it. It's a really like fun experience. The only thing I will say is like it's not nearly as fun on the Wii U, and the reason for that is because the little sketch pad I had to use for it is not completely like responsive in my opinion. And so there were times when I was playing that game where I just was really frustrated because I felt like the pad just wasn't doing what I wanted to do. But when I played it on a DS afterwards, I was like, oh my god, this is so much fun now. It's the same exact game but on a DS, and it's like responsive and it works. And so for that, I do have to put in photosynthesis because I think the console version just isn't as good. But I definitely encourage you all to check out the DS version. It is so amazing. Or is it 3DS? I don't remember what handheld it came out on, but it was pretty solid. Okay, Surf and Skate. Trash. This is a terrible game, I'm sorry. I could have given it some brownie points because even though the Kinect does not work for the game at all, iToy didn't really work that well for Nicktoons movement either. But the difference is the mini games in movement were at least fun. Surf and Skate is just not fun. It's just a whole bunch of nothing. Even if you're not controlling SpongeBob at all, you're still going to like get to the level and get points and progress because the game just basically gives you like everything that you need. And all you really do is just kind of tilt left and right to steer SpongeBob somewhat, even though it doesn't work like half the time. So the only thing I can really say is that I kind of like the cel shaded style of it, but it's not an amazing art direction for a SpongeBob in my opinion. Nicktoons MLB, and so with this game, I'm really like not that crazy about like sports games in general, so I'm not really the best person to ask when it comes to these kind of games. With that being said, I did have fun with MLB. You know, it's a game that worked, and what I really enjoyed about it is the really weird character selection in it. I mean, you got SpongeBob, but you also had like the Flying Dutchman in it. I don't think we've ever had the Flying Dutchman as a playable character in any game before. So for that, I'll give it some points. I'll put it in photosynthesis because it's a fine enough game for it and what it is. Plankton's Robotic Revenge, and so I've infamously done a 12-hour live stream this game, so I feel pretty like well equipped to give my full opinion on this game, and it belongs in the trash. It's such a sad excuse for a SpongeBob game. Not only did Activision tease it as a Battle for Bikini Bottom successor, but they basically pulled the rug under all SpongeBob fans when the game turned out to be nothing but a Ratchet & Clank impersonator, except the gameplay was just much more monotonous and boring, and just overall a very bad experience. I cannot say enough about this game. That's terrible. Like, it's just a mind-boggling experience. Like, the people that made this game are probably dead. You know, the game was probably made by zombies. And going off on that, Hero Pants also belongs in the trash. And so the difference between Robotic Revenge and Hero Pants does kind of ditch a bunch of the combat and makes it more about the platforming, but the platforming still sucks. And so it's just like a lot of the same design like mechanics that they use throughout all the levels, a lot of the same like floaty platforms and like these huge ass areas, and just a bunch of like doing nothing, filibustering your time until the end of the game. It's a short like 2-hour campaign, I think, and so it's a little less painful, I guess, from that perspective. But yeah, really not a fun time. Okay, Nickelodeon Kart Racers. I actually have a lot of nostalgia for this game because it was one of the first games I covered for this channel. I remember enjoying it, you know, quite a bit when I first played it, but now looking back on it, especially compared to the kart racer games that came out right after, it just isn't like anything special. Only has 12 characters, first of all. Like, that's such a crime for a kart racer in this day and age, and a lot of tracks were just really boring and just nothing really that special. It's just a good, okay kart racer, you know, nothing really that stands out about it, but it wasn't terrible either. I'll go ahead and put it in E minor. because it's just such a nothing game, especially compared to what we got afterwards. Okay, you might be a little bit surprised to see this game in here, but technically SpongeBob Krusty Cook-Off got a console release on the Nintendo Switch, which is kind of weird because it's basically a mobile game. So that in itself makes you really want to put it down in the rankings, because how dare you try to like cosplay a mobile game as a proper console game and sell it for like the same price? Like, it's just not a great look for Nickelodeon in my opinion. But that being said, it's actually not a bad game. You know, it's a pretty fun game when you just kind of like take away the fact that it's a mobile game disguised as a console game. But the game itself is really not that bad. It's a pretty decent experience and I enjoyed it when I played it for the short time that I did. I'm a little torn between photosynthesis and E minor, but I think I'll give it photosynthesis, because at the end of the day, it is a decent experience. It is a fun time. So check out the mobile game if you want to. Don't pay for the console version. Like, even though it has like extra stuff, it's still the same mobile game. So okay, and now we're at SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. Wow, what a game, honestly. I don't think I can say anything else about this game. I think I've literally squeezed it dry when it comes to discussion points about it. In my opinion, it's not as good as the original, but still a fairly good remake of that game. So I'll go ahead and put it in more handsome than handsome Squidward. I'm totally okay with the fact that most newer fans that played that game for the first time prefer that game over the original, but for me, the original just has a special sauce to it that can't be topped. Not to mention, Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated does have a bunch of technical issues that I'm not really a big fan of. That doesn't impede on the gameplay experience itself, but it definitely is something I have to take into account. Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2. So this is a pretty good game, actually. Nickelodeon Kart Racers 2 took everything that Nickelodeon Kart Racers did and just made it better. You know, you have like 5 times more tracks, 10 times more characters, more interesting gameplay mechanics incorporated, more items, more ways to customize the experience, especially of like all the crewmates in particular. It definitely was a step up for Nickelodeon Kart Racers in so many ways, and I don't know, I feel really good about this game. I was really pleasantly surprised by it. I can't say I played it a lot because unfortunately, like, I still think the kart racing at the end of the day is just nothing that special, but I do appreciate like the efforts they went into to make that game as good as it could be. So I'll give it a leg up. I'll put it in photosynthesis. Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. Okay, so this game I feel like had so much potential. It could have been a real smashing success. But the problem is, the game just does not have enough content to really sustain itself the way that games like Smash Brothers have. And I know that's a huge tall order to hit, but the game only hit like 10% of it. Like, it just is such a nothing game in terms of like its content. But the gameplay mechanics themselves are so much fun and such a blast to play through. I still pause the game every now and then because I enjoy playing it. I love playing as SpongeBob. I love playing against CPUs. I can't find anyone online, but if I could find someone online, I definitely would enjoy it too. So I think Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl gets a little bit too much hate because of the expectations that it really set up for itself, and it really was just destined to fail, honestly, given what it was expected to do. But I do hope that Game Build Entertainment does go back to that concept the way that they have with kart racers and gives it a second chance and makes it even better, because if we can see an upgrade on the magnitude of Nickelodeon Kart Racers 1 to 2 the way that we see with Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, then we have a home run. We have a really great game upon us. So definitely more handsome than handsome Squidward. It's a really good platform fighter at the end of the day, and I definitely encourage people to check it out, especially if they're a Smash Brothers fan. Nickelodeon Kart Racers 3. So I lied at the beginning of this video. I actually have not played this game. From the little that I've seen of it, it takes everything Kart Racers 2 does and just adds more content basically. And it also has like the transform mechanic, which seems really cool. Unfortunately, I can't really say if it's a good game or not because I just was not interested enough to try it. Like, I'm just so tired of Kart Racers at the moment, and I don't know when I'm gonna try it, but it definitely looked like a promising game. So if you have an opinion on that game, then let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But just for the sake of fairness, I'm gonna put in photosynthesis, because I don't know if it's actually better than Kart Racers 2, but it looks like it's at least on the same level as Kart Racers 2, but correct me if I'm wrong. And then the last game we have over here is Cosmic Shake. And so Cosmic Shake was definitely a game I was a little bit nervous about because, you know, after reflecting on Rehydrate after a long time, it kind of made me realize that it actually wasn't like the most perfect experience, and actually wasn't even like a great experience in terms of like a remake standpoint. So Cosmic Shake really had a lot to like prove in terms of like, can Purple Lamp actually make a really solid SpongeBob game? The answer is yes, 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 yes. Cosmic Shake is an amazing game. It's going to Robot Pirate Island Conqueror. It is a great addition to the SpongeBob video game canon. Ugh, I cannot say enough great things about the game. It's such an advancement of what Battle for Bikini Bottom did in this modern age. It's just as good of a game now as Battle for Bikini Bottom was back then. It's the next true step in the Battle for Bikini Bottom legacy, and it's a great game. Like, I can't say enough great things about it. It's just such a fun time, so well made. It definitely had some things I wish could have been improved on, but overall, Cosmic Shake is just such a fun experience, and I'm so glad Purple Lamp got the opportunity to really show off their skills, and they proved themselves. They really proved themselves with Cosmic Shake. It is such a great experience. Whoa, that is my tier list right there. That actually was a lot more tiring than I thought it was gonna be. And so, seems kind of balanced overall. I feel like I have a little too many games in photosynthesis, but truth be told, a lot of these games are just kind of like games that I don't really care much about, but I don't hate. There's definitely a bunch of other games that I'm not a big fan of. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Are there any games you would move in this list? Let me know what games you would move and let me know why not. I think I'll leave a link to this tier list in the description box below. So if you want to do your own tier list and send it over to me, I would love to take a look at them, and maybe I'll like do like a quick little like shorts video looking through some of them and kind of just like reacting to them. So definitely feel free to do the list and then send it to me on Twitter, Discord, Instagram, you know, wherever you can find me. I'd be really interested in seeing your thoughts. But other than that, y'all, thank you so much. Let me know what other videos you want to see from me in the future. Do you want me to do tier lists for different things? Would love to kind of hear your thoughts. I'm kind of like in a weird position with this channel right now where I don't really know what I want to do with it. I definitely have a lot of plans coming up that I'm going to talk about really soon. But in the meantime, hope you enjoyed this, and thank you all so much. This is Riders, riding out.